suppose the major thing is that my childhood was so very, very different from yours in so many ways. I suppose you could say a lot of it was very insecure, but a lot of the insecure parts were still exciting for me, and maybe that's because at such an early age one is completely unconscious of things like that, or one is into the spirit of the situation. My earliest memory is of getting up on my 4th birthday and running to the mirror to see how I had changed, mostly to see how much taller I had become overnight, but of course there was no change, and I can remember feeling vaguely disappointed. The other thing I remember is wearing that white dress with all the Croatian embroidery on it. When we went back and forth to Europe, oh, I loved that traveling. I remember the Channel crossing. I remember the border crossings. So it was always a big adventure. The last time that we came back from England, I remember my father insisted that I immediately go to the Italian school, even though I was practically wordless as far as Italian went. It was the Scuola Elementare Antonio Cipico. I had beginning Latin and Italian. I was always at the top of the class. My Italian was better than that of most of the Italian kids. The standard uniform for the girls was a sort of a white pinafore, all-encompassing apron kind of thing with a blue bow at the front. Then I graduated to the big time, and I got through the first grade of the gymnasium, and you got to wear a sophisticated black outfit with a white collar. I love to read. I had all the classic books, all the Winnie the Pooh, Christopher Robin, and the Grimm's fairy tales, Black Beauty, Swiss Family Robinson, Treasure Island. I also liked writing a lot. Even at that time, I always thought that I would have loved to have been an author, a writer. Oh, there were really so many things to do. In the summer, there'd be the sailing and the canoeing. My father tried to teach me to sail, but it was really too big a boat and I was too small. During the summer, it seemed like we had endless company. There were guests constantly coming and going. There was the Princess Javidan, who was a Hungarian who had married the last Khedive of Egypt. That's pretty much what life in Zadar was like. When the war started to approach, I just became terribly aware of things like that. We were listening to the Mussolini declare war on the radio. It was shortly thereafter that the police told us that we had to get the hell out of there within 24 hours. Having been told that we had to get out, the big question was how to get out. It was at that point that they confiscated whatever little bit of money that my father had. The only thing they didn't get was this draft for Swiss francs. During the packing process, they had sewed that up and stuffed it in the back of that little dopey doll. I think I've shown you where the stitching is ripped out of the back. We found a Yugoslav fishing boat. So that was how we left Zadar, on a fishing boat, and ended up in Preko. So when this small Yugoslav boat from one of the Yugoslav steamship companies put in at Preko, we got on and we went to Dubrovnik, and we ended up in Savtat. Then in September, my father died. He was buried in a little tiny Greek Orthodox cemetery in an out-of-the-way place in the hills. In the meantime, we had started to get notices from the British consul saying that it looked like the Germans were going to be on the move, and it would be extremely advisable for all British subjects to leave Yugoslavia. So it was ultimately decided that we should head for Canada. We packed up our stuff, took the boat to Dubrovnik, got on the train in Dubrovnik, and went to Belgrade by way of Mostar and Sarajevo. From Belgrade, we then headed for Istanbul. We went through Greece and Bulgaria, and I remember in the morning waking up as we were approaching Istanbul, and oh God, it was just so impressive. You could see the early morning sun shining on a lot of the gold domes. You could see the minarets. You know as a child, you know that bad things are going on, but at the same time, one is receptive to the surroundings and the adventure. It's the adults who have all of the responsibility and probably can't enjoy it, but since one's just sort of along for the ride, I was probably in a better position to appreciate and marvel and wonder at all the things that I was seeing. So we were in Istanbul for about a week, and then we got on another train to go to Baghdad. So we finally got to Baghdad. One thing that I remember from being in Baghdad is the terribly deteriorating news of the war. It really looked like the Germans were going to take over Africa. It was very scary. It really took me till past the Korean War to get over that feeling of being afraid that war was going to get me. I was really scared of wars. We got on the train in Baghdad and left for Basra, which was where the Bosch Fontaine was going to leave from. We sailed out of Basra. I guess our first stop was Abadan in Iran. I remember we stopped at Oman and Kuwait. So we proceeded out of there, and our first major stop was Karachi in what was then India, and which of course is now Pakistan. It was on the Bosch Fontaine that I had my first Coca-Cola. Oh my God, that was the biggest treat of the day for me. I had never tasted anything so sublime. I loved carbonated beverages anyway. So not only did I get the carbonation, but I got this tremendous taste which I had never experienced before. So after Karachi, the next stop was Bombay. Next stop, Colombo in Ceylon. I think I rode an elephant. I think we watched elephants bathing in pools. So on to the next stop, which was Penang in Malaya. And then next stop just down the road from Penang was Singapore. Then we went to Manila. From the Philippines, we shoot down in the direction of the Spice Islands. From there, we headed to Port Darwin, Australia. From Port Darwin, it was the big long haul to Hawaii, and that was a huge, endless weeks of uninterrupted transoceanic voyaging until we got to Honolulu. So we finally get to San Pedro, California, my very first glimpse of the longed-for United States. And we ended up in LA at the Mayflower Hotel. At the Mayflower Hotel, went down to breakfast, and the menu said little dollar cakes. And I just thought that sounded so great. I didn't know what it was, but it just sounded like something I should have. And of course, what it turned out to be was little breakfast pancakes with butter and syrup. And of course, that was something that was totally alien to me. And it was a great new taste, thrill, and treat. And then we proceeded up the coast to San Francisco. Eventually, we ended up in Vancouver. It was the end of the journey, and it was sort of like, what's going to happen next? What's going to become of us? what is going to become of me.